Hello and welcome to today's Sunday interview. My name is Frenklin Tembo Jr., sitting in for your usual presenter, Gravazio Zulu. Now, Zambia's national economy budget is currently standing at 64.5 billion kwacha. The Zambian government is expected to fund 46.7 billion kwacha from domestic resources, of which 37.6 is tax revenue. 17.7 billion kwacha is expected to be funded by cooperating partners through grants and financing. The government, through the Ministry of Finance, has assured Zambians that the IMF financial bailout is meant to help Zambia meet its budgetary requirements. On the other hand, however, the taxman is playing good Samaritan. Last year, we saw ZRA offering a motor vehicle amnesty to members of the public, while on the 24th of April 2017, ZRA again launched a tax amnesty. The new amnesty means that taxpayers have a 100% waiver of interest and tax penalties on all tax accounts, provided the tax liabilities are fully liquidated. That is the thrust of the program today as we look at tax waivers. To shed more light on this, I'm privileged to have on the program the ZRA Commissioner General, Mr. Kingsley Chanda. Thank you for taking time to be with us on Sunday interview, and welcome.
Thank you, Franklin, and hello, viewers.
Generally, there's been what you may call good feedback with the announcement that there's an amnesty on interest and penalties. Would you like to give a brief background as to why we're here today?
Yes, thank you very much, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak to our taxpayers. Tax amnesty is meant to give relief to our taxpayers who have had the burden of paying interest and penalties on their tax accounts, which penalties and interests may have arisen for various reasons. Mm-hmm. Some reasons could clearly be beyond their control, and I'll mention three prominent ones. One of them is that some of our suppliers, they supply goods to institutions that don't pay them on time. Mm-hmm. Now, for us, as ZRA, we have due dates, and regardless of whether that supplier is paid or not, when the tax which is due on that particular transaction is payable, we expect it to be paid. And when that taxpayer doesn't pay, interest starts accumulating, mm-hmm. and penalties. And as you are aware, we are fully automated. So most of these computations, in fact, all of them are done electronically. The second reason is that from 2014, 2015, we were migrating our tax system from the old system, which we were calling ITAS, to the current one, which is called Tax Online. So during the migration process, our taxpayers were having challenges to access the new system. Mm-hmm. And during that period, they were not able to pay their taxes on time. And as a result of that, they started accumulating the interest and penalties. Now, clearly, that is not their fault. It's beyond their control. And we have another third category where people just decide not to pay on time, or they decide not to file their returns on time. So in both of these, in all these three circumstances, interest and penalties accumulate. So the situation got to an extent where we were sitting on something like 29 billion kwachas in principal taxes, interest, and penalties. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the bulk of that money, it was all interest and penalties. In fact, what is collectible out of that amount is only 8 billion. Now, 8 billion compared to 29 billion, it's colossal. And most of the taxpayers who may even be in a position to pay, willing to pay, they were being discouraged by the huge penalties and interest that were sitting on their accounts. And this situation has been going on. If you read Auditor General's reports year in, year out, ZRA was being accused of failing to collect tax debt.
Right.
That we were lenient on tax debt, we are not following up, and we are just allowing taxpayers to get away with it and so on. But when we analyzed, we realized that, you know, the major discouraging factor was the interest and penalties.
Right. Now, you have a 2-month period, I think, which you've given.
Yes.
And one would argue that the period is not enough. I mean, if the defaulters come and pay, then they have the responsibility or obligation now to live up to their expectations.
Exactly.
Shouldn't that have gone up to, say, December this year? Aren't you putting pressure and potentially going back to the same problem you're solving now?
Not at all. The way we have structured the tax amnesties is that the 3 months, in fact, it's 24th April. Yeah, it's 2 months. 24th April to 30th June. This period is a period in which those that are capable of paying, liquidating their entire principal taxes, can liquidate and get 100% waiver on their interest and penalties. Those that can't, we're allowing them to go up to December. What they need to do is to get to us and sign what we call time to pay agreements, where they give us an indication of how much they will be paying per month until end of December. Okay? So the 2 months that you are talking about are basically the months in which to agree with the taxpayers. Okay? It's just to agree. Are we signing a time to pay agreement, or are you liquidating before end of June? If you are liquidating before end of June, fair enough, we'll waive your taxes. But if you are not able because of cash flow constraints, then we are prepared to give you up to end of December.
There is 6.7 billion or somewhere thereabout, which is expected to come through your mandate. Is that inclusive of the penalties? Is that
no,
it's not.
No, in fact, that is a very important observation. One of the major criticisms that we have received, I think so far that is the only one, because the whole business community have appreciated the gesture, is that we are reducing government revenue by giving the amnesty. The fact is that we are not. Our mandate is to collect taxes. Our mandate is not to collect penalties, because penalties arise as a result of failure by a client or a taxpayer to comply. Okay? So our focus is the principal taxes. That's why, if you have noticed, this amnesty is not on the principal taxes. It is on the interest and penalties that accrue for various reasons, as I stated earlier. And some of those reasons we realize are beyond the control of our taxpayers. And related to that, we have excluded other circumstances under which taxes, interest and penalties accrue. And some of those that have been excluded are issues of audits, okay, frauds, crime, criminal activities such as smuggling, or where either ourselves or a taxpayer decided to go to court and the court has ruled that both the principal taxes and penalties must be paid. Those have been excluded from this amnesty.
Why? Okay. Why is that?
Well, imagine somebody who deliberately decides to defraud on tax. Why should you give them amnesty on interest and penalties?
What about the ones that contest, whose cases are in court, like you say?
We wait for the court outcome.
But isn't that pronouncing that somebody is guilty before the actual outcome comes? Why shouldn't they be in the same band as the others, who are getting this amnesty?
You can imagine the absurd situation we may create if we give amnesty to a person who is before, or a taxpayer who is before courts of law, and then the court decides that he must pay those penalties. So the best thing we can do, which we have done, is to wait until the court process is over. And when the courts have determined, that is what both ourselves and the taxpayer will follow. However, if a taxpayer, in most cases taxpayers that sue us, if the taxpayer decides to withdraw the case from court, we are prepared to discuss.
So this can lead, because others will argue that really you should be on the principle rather than the penalties that is the current issue, whether one is in court or not.
No, the fact is that when matters are taken to court, okay, you cannot presume that somebody is innocent. Neither can you presume that somebody is guilty. So the most decent thing to do is to allow the court process. Okay?
Let's move out of court. What about the ones under investigation? Because I think they also fall in the same bracket. You're also not considering those ones.
Yes, we are.
They're just under investigation.
Yes. Those, we invest cases where we find that there is a tendency, maybe over a long period of time, to deliberately evade tax. Okay? So there is already a criminal element.
But it's not guilty.
Yeah. Yes. That is why we should allow the investigations to be completed.
But that is assuming they're guilty.
No, not at all.
It's just an investigation.
Yes.
It doesn't mean the perceived wrongdoer is guilty.
So are you assuming?
You're conducting an investigation because you'd like to get to the facts. So before the facts happen, you announce an amnesty to the country.
Okay.
Why would they not enjoy this amnesty, even if they're under investigation?
The fact is that we have a fully-fledged investigations department, okay, for two reasons. One, to correct such kind of fraudulent activities and deliberate evasion of tax, but two, to also understand the details of how people manage to evade tax, how they circumvent the law, okay? Without that understanding, it's very difficult for us to prevent such activities happening in future. And therefore, we are saying, for cases under investigations, cases before court, let's allow the due process, okay? The cases that we want to deal with immediately and reduce our debt stock are those penalties and interests that have arisen because of the transition period when we were changing our system, because people paid taxes late for various reasons. It might be due to, to the economy, or maybe the people they supplied goods delayed to pay them, or those that may have paid taxes but did not file their returns. Because unfortunately our system is structured in such a way that even if you paid tax to us, you still be accumulating penalties if you do not submit a return, because a return is your source document. Right. So in all those situations, and we have had, maybe out of ignorance, people have been paying taxes but without submitting returns, and they have huge penalties. So we want to get rid of those penalties. There have been circumstances where somebody delays to pay, their VAT, for example, because their client did not pay them on time, and there are huge penalties and interest that accumulate. We want to get rid of those. But for those that we suspect have been evading tax, I think it's only fair that we go through the process, because then we will not have a learning point to prevent such activities in future.
So you don't think that you are giving and taking away the same amnesty, with the conditions that you've given on interest and penalties in some cases?
No, not at all. I mean, it's very straightforward. I mean, you may wish to know that in the first 9 days of the amnesty, we collected 93 million kwacha and received 4,800 applications. Now, that is huge. If you look at the period, if we assume that we'll be collecting that kind of money, 93 million in 9 days, up to the end of the amnesty period, initially the 2 months and then up to December, 9 months, it will be a lot of money, okay? And our projected yield from this exercise is about 2.5 billion. And I'll explain why, before you ask me why we are looking at 2.5 when the stock is 8 billion. Right. 2016 was a particularly difficult year for taxpayers in this country and for the economy in general. And a lot of companies declared losses. As you are aware, our economy revolves around copper, and the copper prices were generally depressed. So a lot of other businesses were affected. The fact that we have declared a tax amnesty doesn't immediately mean that companies are now liquid and can pay, okay? Some companies are just coming out of that depression. They're just, as you are aware, copper prices have been increasing, and they are looking very promising. And everything else that revolves around copper, people are getting employed, you know, economic activities are coming up and so on. Yeah, we are hopeful that companies, particularly those that work in the mining sector, will be able to meet their obligations. But not everybody will have the liquidity immediately to pay the principal taxes.
Right.
So we are being conservative. We are saying, okay, out of this debt stock, we may get this. But if we can get 8 billion, okay, which is our ultimate target, and at the rate we are going, you know, it's looking pretty good. We might, but we want to be conservative and realistic. So we are targeting 2.5, but it could be more, and we want it to be more.
In the same breath, you're obviously hoping that during this period, entities will be factual and truthful, you know, with the returns. How will you ensure, how will you know, what mechanism do you put in place that, you know, without taking advantage of the amnesty, you will get right, factual and truthful information?
Yeah, that is a very, very important point, and I'm very happy that you have raised it. We believe in voluntary compliance, okay? That is our first method of collection. Companies, taxpayers must be honest and declare truthfully, okay? There are two components in tax collection. There's compliance and enforcement. Enforcement is where we start kicking doors and digging, you know, through people's accounts and so on. We don't want to get there. We want to encourage voluntary compliance. I've said, and I want to say this now, it is every citizen's responsibility, and it must be an honor to pay tax. You should feel proud to contribute to the development of your country. Imagine a time when 100% of our domestic tax, our domestic budget is financed using domestic resources. And Zambia is capable of doing that. What we have had in this country has been a culture of non-compliance, okay? A culture of non-compliance, and, you know, issues of smuggling are normal. You know, people always plan to smuggle. You receive income. Even if you are doing a business on the side, you are employed, you want to put that money in your personal account, you don't declare any tax at all. You know, it's like that is normal. But all those activities, illegal activities for that matter, take away the capacity of government to mobilize resources to finance its budget. In the meantime, the same citizens that do not want to pay tax expect government services. They want good roads. They want medicines in the hospitals. They want good schools. Do
you think you've done a good job then in presenting yourselves as a necessary, not a necessary evil? I don't want to use that word. But there's public perception. When you see ZRA run as against, you know, work with ZRA, do you think that public perception and, you know, the need for people to have the desire, you know, to pay taxes because without, you know, the amenities, have you done a good job, you think?
This is what we are doing. I think in the past, admittedly, we may not have done a good job. And that's why I was explaining that our first line of collection is voluntary compliance, okay? You asked me a question, what are you going to do if people are not giving factual information and they don't step forward at all? We will go to the second pillar of our collection, which is enforcement. I want to urge all taxpayers to take advantage of this window, because when we get to the other side, I think it will not be pleasant.
Are you threatening them?
It's not a threat. Under the law, there is provision for seizure of property. There's provision for garnishing of accounts, okay? We have those powers. Even now, if we wanted, we would have gone that route to say, this 8 billion, let's collect it. Whoever owes, we have the names of people. We know exactly who is owing what. We have that information. We could have closed their accounts, we could have seized their properties, we could have closed their premises, But we didn't want to do that.
But isn't that where the problem is? There's pressure on a few that are paying taxes in this country. Yeah. And there's probably fatigue. And there's talk about widening the tax base and related matters. Yeah. Shouldn't you be starting from, I don't know, from secondary school? Shouldn't you inculcate a culture that should be more long-term so that people feel guilty once they haven't paid taxes?
Exactly.
That seems to be absent, and so you end up firefighting.
Yeah, I think you've put it very well. People must feel guilty that they are not contributing to, to tax collection. The argument, it's a decent argument to expand the tax base, okay, has been there, and people have been talking about it. It's the same story of diversifying our economy. I think since if you read newspapers of 1969, 72, those famous speeches, we were talking about diversifying our economy from copper to something else, and today we are still talking about that, okay? Expanding the tax base has been there. Now, the current approach of ZRI is that let's be strategic, okay? We have a formal sector, which is, if you like, a captive tax base. It's there, it's captured, it's on our books, and it's formal. If you want to see the accountant for ZNBC, you know where to find them, okay? Which is operating at below 60% compliance.
That is sad, right?
Yes. Now let me answer your question. So if I have the formal sector, which is below 60% in terms of compliance, why should I waste my not wasting? Why should I spend my meager resources to go and look for a Mr. Chanda who sells in that corner, okay? And I may find him there, register him today. Tomorrow he will go into another corner. I will not find him there because most of the informers, they have no fixed abode. They don't even have offices. They have briefcases. Okay? So our strategy is we are getting to capturing the informal sector. And we have already started with tip-in registration. Okay? And working with the Bankers Association of Zambia. Banks insisting on tip-in for every person opening a bank account and so on. Right. We are also expanding our public education campaign. We've just set up a fully fledged public relations department, which we are calling communications department, under my office, because it must have I must have direct control over that and ensure that it is properly resourced. We are doing all that, and we'll get to the formal sector. But first and foremost, we said let's identify the sector. Let's identify the players in the formal sector by capturing them in one form or another. And our best way to identify our taxpayers is using the taxpayers identification number. So we are working on that. But in the meantime, we want to focus our resources to ensure that this formal sector is compliant. Or if we can take our formal sector to even 90%, 95%, which is our target. You can never be 100%. But if we get it to 95%, the revenue complexion in the country will completely change. We will significantly reduce our dependence on loans and donor support as a way of financing our domestic budget.
Right. Yeah. There are some that applied for waivers before the amnesty.
Yes.
What happens to that?
Yeah, they don't need to apply. Again, what we have done in our practice note and even in our public adverts is that we have given a unique email address. It's amnesty@zra.org.zm. It's all over in our practice notes.
Right.
People should just send an email to that address, giving details of their applications and their number, because we generate a number once your application has been received. That unique number, when they give that in that email, we now have dedicated officers that are dealing with nothing else but amnesty.
Okay. So
they will be attended to. So they don't need to apply again because we have the information.
What about penalties already paid on principal tax liability? What happens to that?
If the principal tax liability is paid,
yes,
and then there are still penalties and interest, yeah, as long as that assessment did not arise from the excluded list, then those will be waived as well.
Okay.
Yes.
The issue of compliance and non-compliance, when you look at people in business who might be depending on payments. Let's say you're a supplier to the mines.
Yes.
And they depend on timely payments.
Yeah.
And in many instances, the timeliness of the payments leads to pressure on suppliers whom you expect taxes from. Do you sometimes think that it is, do you have time to understand the pressure that they receive? Because generally, the times when it's not really the supplier's fault,
yeah,
but where they're taking their businesses to. So this issue of timeliness when it comes to people getting paid and eventually having to pay you, surely does mean that you will always have a backlog.
Yes.
Is that a problem?
Yeah, it is, but we have addressed it. We are addressing it through two methods. One, we've changed the collection process. We now collect taxes, especially VAT, at source. So if you supply goods to a mine and in your invoice there are taxes, instead of the mines paying you your full invoice, which includes taxes, they will withhold the tax and pay you, just pay you your money. And then that tax gets remitted directly to ZRI. Okay? And that, within a space of 4 months, has actually changed our VAT collections. Our VAT collections are now up by 500%. Really? 500%, yes. Okay. Okay? The reason is simple. Our people, unfortunately, and we are just trying to help them to comply. Our people, unfortunately, they were not able, when they see those kwachas in their account, they were not able to distinguish what was their money and what was tax money. As far as they were concerned, all that was their income, and they, in the meantime, they were accumulating tax liabilities on their account. So, to help them comply, we are now collecting that tax at source, including people that supply to the government. We have appointed all government ministries and departments as tax agents. So you will not be seeing taxes being paid to suppliers because they were having difficulties to remit that tax to ZRI. Okay. So we want to help them by collecting it at source. And as a result of that, as I said, that particular tax has gone up by over 500%, and it's doing extremely well. Then the second thing we have done to address that problem is the amnesty. Okay? We are saying, start afresh. We know that these penalties and interest that you have accumulated are not because you wanted to, but it's because you were paid late. We understand that. So we are giving you this amnesty, start afresh. When you have such a challenge, because now we'll be capturing all the invoices. As you are aware, we are now moving towards e-platform. Everything that you do to any supplier, we'll be able to see that. When you have a challenge where your payment has not come in good time, okay, and the person you have, or the company you have supplied, or the organization you have supplied is not a tax agent, quickly come to ZRA and indicate the possibility of you delaying to pay the tax. We are reasonable people, and we understand business, the way business works in any economy. So if you come to us, we'll be able to say, okay, fine, we expected you to pay 2 kwacha, but because your payment has been delayed, we take note of your notification. In the meantime, you put in your return, because your return is not the same as a payment. Okay? You are required to put in a return on every due date, whether it's VAT, it's income tax, it's pay as you earn, or it's excise duty. You are supposed to put in that return. Once you have put in a return and a letter explaining that, yes, I've declared that I owe you so much, but I'm unable to pay because company X has not paid me on this particular, we understand. And
do all of your officers understand?
Well, they do. They do. I mean, we give them training. One thing that you should be pleased about, Frenklin, is that ZRA has extremely well-educated people, very professional. Of course, we do have bad eggs, and we are getting rid of them once we find them. because we don't want embarrassments. We don't want to be saying this to the public and what is happening is something else.
In the same breath, there are people who have felt like they've been hurt by ZRA. I think you've also come under personal attack because of your work. How have you been able to deal with that?
You're talking about social media? Well,
it's the new world that we have to deal with.
You know, for me, when I see that, I feel sad, because if a person can concoct a story, like the stories that have been written about me, which any sensible person would believe is true, I think it's a waste of such a wonderful resource. Such creative people should write fiction books or write fiction movies, because they can make money. In other countries, people who concoct such stories and write nicely and create stories which are not there,
what has been what has been the most hurtful story about you?
None at all. None at all. I mean, if you look at the genesis, immediately I was appointed to the issues of my incompetence and inability to run an organization like that, you know, it has proved not to be the case. There was, you know, all sorts of stories about my corruption, that I was corrupt, and, you know, when I was in the private sector and so on. I was a consultant for SADC, for COMESA. I worked in South Africa for the South African Treasury, you know, and I can account for what I was able to do, you know, after I left.
And you're not being too sensitive about this?
No, not at all, because you see, this is a distraction. I will not, for me, my focus is on the country. I have a mandate that I've been given by government through the president to mobilize revenues for the nation. It's not about me, it's not about my family. Indeed, it's not even enough about the 1,600 employees of ZRA at the moment. It's about the nation. What
about the perception that your institution is sometimes used to settle scores in the political arena by government? How would you react to that?
Oh, do you have any example of that?
You have heard that. It comes together with the bundled together with a tax on you. It's bundled together with a tax on your institution.
Well, the fact is that as the Commissioner General's office is structured at the moment, a Commissioner General legally is supposed to be appointed by the President. So any President at any given time will appoint his Commissioner General, just as he appoints his senior government officials. Okay? But even when you are appointed, at least this President, his message is very clear. To me, in particular, you have to be professional. Okay? You have a country to serve. You must be above politics. You must be above petty issues. That is the message he gave me. So, how would this is my appointing authority, how do I get into that office and start peddling political agendas? I'm not a politician. I'm a professional tax collector. That's my job. Okay? So, there's no point at which ZRA, in my time, even 10 years ago before I left, when I was Commissioner of Customs, and in my 7 months after I returned, I've never received any instructions to fix anyone for political reasons. Because ZRA actions are always guided by the provisions of the law. And taxpayers, or indeed citizens, have recourse to courts of law when they feel they have been unfairly treated.
Where do you think this kind of perception comes from, and why do you think it could be cooked up, if at all?
Well, you know, the advantage in a democracy is that people are free to think and do anything, provided probably they don't cross a particular line. So when somebody stands on a podium and makes an allegation, if there's no element of criminality or whatever, you take it that they're exercising their freedom to speak. And personally, I'm somebody who is very open to positive criticism, because that builds me. Okay? When people criticize me because I've done something wrong, or I'm heading in a wrong direction, or I'm leading an organization as sensitive as ZRA in a wrong direction, and I get criticized for that, for me, I accept that with humility, because it is designed to build me. But if people choose to be malicious, okay, if people choose to be malicious, the advantage with ZRI is that it's a very easy institution to measure in terms of performance. Very easy. It's about numbers. It's about the way you treat the taxpayers. It's about efficiency. Okay? If you look at all these things, if you get to the border and it takes 8 hours for you to be saved, if you get to the airport, you are in the arrivals hall for 4 hours because the customs officers, you can easily know how the institution is performing. Okay?
Right.
If you have a target, you are just mentioning numbers there. Our target this year is actually 36.7 billion, okay, tax revenue. There are other non-tax revenues that makes up that difference. Tax revenue is 36.7 billion. By December 31st, I must go back to the president and to the Minister of Finance and say, I collected 36 point whatever. Were you under target or above target? You can, you can easily measure the performance of ZRA.
Are you enjoying your job?
Oh, I'm so passionate about tax collection. It is strange that I was tuned into that profession almost by accident. When I was at university, I studied agricultural economics because I wanted to be an agricultural economist, and that is why you see those remnants of my appetite for farming. I'm into farming. So, but my first job with an international company was in taxation, and I started enjoying it.
But coming into a job that draws so much public attention with the criticism that comes with it, some fair, some unfair, do you sometimes feel that maybe you took up the wrong mantle?
You see, we have a saying in my language, which is, if you go in a forest, a thick forest, okay, you shouldn't bother about lizards and all those small noises and so on, because they're inevitable, okay? We say, uingira mushitu tomfu enswaswa. You see, by virtue of that public office and the sensitivity of the institution, such situations are inevitable. You are not seeing even the last of it. I mean, people continue talking, okay? And if people condemn my social life and it's factual, I must have introspection. And my right path is to change. Mm-hmm. But if people make up stories and want to malign me and put my name in disrepute, of course it's unfair, but you can't fight social media. Who is social media? I mean, some of these people, like the same platform, fortunately it's only one platform that criticizes me and criticizes the president, and it's just one platform. They have an agenda, okay? If I wish I had an opportunity to see and know who they are, I would sit down with them and ask them why, because I will not change what is not there. I will not change what is not there. If they say, stop going to such a place where I don't go, a place where I will not change that.
Right.
Because as long as I don't go there, as far as they are concerned, I go there. Right. So how do I change it?
Okay. Yes. Let's move on to the, getting back to the amnesty and its benefits. When it comes to SMEs, what is expected? Because maybe this is the area that can really benefit from this. In fact, you'll be impressed to know that the 93 million kwacha that we have collected is not even from the big taxpayers. Yeah. For the big taxpayers, our strategy has been, when we saw that in the first 3-4 days they were not coming forward, we have decided to print their tax accounts and we engage them and invite them to discuss their tax liability. But the people that have really taken advantage of this amnesty are the SMEs. And they are the same people that we are talking about whose payments get delayed when they supply the mines, when they supply government, the road construction companies, where NRFA takes long to pay and so on. These are the people that have really taken advantage and they are running to clean their accounts. Because you may recall, I think many taxpayers were wondering, we only issued tax clearance certificates up to June.
because we are working on this in the background.
Right.
We needed the necessary approvals with the Minister of Finance, and also answer these same questions, you know, before from our principals. But we decided to issue clearance certificates up to June, because we were confident that we will convince government to do this amnesty. So what will happen is that those that will not come forward, SMEs, and this is very important, if you don't step forward, your tax clearance certificate will expire in June, and will not issue any tax clearance certificate. Okay. Meaning you can't get a contract from anyone, you can't participate in tenders, and we ensure that we will publish, okay, the details of all the expired tax clearance certificates, so that organizations that would like to hire services and procure goods do not consider those companies. Okay. For example, in ZRA, if you are not tax compliant, you can't even apply for any job. Even if we advertise and we tender and you are the best bidder, we will not consider you. And this is also being replicated in government agencies and the ministries. So for SMEs, please continue coming through. Okay, we will guide you and make sure that you are eligible to get your tax clearance certificate, which will take you up to December, because the ones that we gave are expiring come June 30th.
What happens in cases where the principal tax is zero? Do taxpayers still apply for amnesty?
Yes, yes, they should. If the taxpayers have not applied for waiver of those penalties and interest, and as I said earlier, they are not falling on the exclusion list, they should apply for amnesty, and we'll consider that. Right. In fact, those are even quicker. What we are doing, Frenklin, because of the volumes of applications that we are receiving, we have decided to automate the waiver of the interest and penalties. Right. So the system will be scanning the data. When the system finds that the principal has been dropped or it has been paid, then the interest and penalties will be automatically waived. You know, at the moment, we hope to achieve this by Friday next week. Our programmers are working on the script. But at the moment, officers are working on this manually. I can give you an example. We received 4,800 applications. So far, we have only worked on 500 because we are doing it manually. So it's quite slow. And I want to appeal to our taxpayers not to be frustrated, because I've received phone calls and representation that, look, I've cleared my principal taxes, but each time I log on to my account, you know, online, I find that my interest and penalties have not dropped. Please do not panic, okay? Those who have already paid their principal taxes, their interest and penalties will be dropped. For now, we are doing it manually, but we are hoping that by Friday next week, our automatic waiver of interest and penalties will be commissioned, and the process will be quicker. Okay. Yeah.
Let's move on briefly to other issues, obviously, that affect the money due to the country through your office: smuggling, tax evasion, which we've talked about, and falsification of tax returns or documents. What is going on? Any hope to see this change in the near future or during your reign, or is this something that you leave to the next person, if at all?
No, I actually want to deal with it. We recently launched a zero tolerance for smuggling. I'm not sure if you heard about that. What we have decided now, I think with effect from mid last month, is that if you smuggle, you lose your goods and you lose the vessel, okay, which could be a truck, it can be a van, it can be a plane, it can be anything that you have used to smuggle. Both the goods and the vessel get seized and forfeited to the state without compensation, okay? Now, what used to happen in the past was that people never bothered. When you are caught, it's just your bad day. After all, ZRA will auction, okay, or they'll take you to court where you get fined, 1,500 and warned. Now we are saying we will not take that route. We will not auction the goods, we will donate the goods. If they are edible goods like cooking oil, edible oils and so on, we will donate to the vulnerable. If they are motor vehicles, our police have a very, very difficult task of policing our nation. We'll give it to the police so that you improve security. In any case, we work with police on enforcement activities, so it makes sense that we help them with additional resources. And we are aware that when we give to the police, the smugglers don't go to harass them. And we have had situations where smugglers have grabbed back their vehicles after we have auctioned to somebody else. So our zero tolerance for smuggling is working. And I can confirm to you that at the moment, we have 5 trucks, foreign trucks, that smuggled alcohol and cooking oil. And we had additional 4 trucks just yesterday, which smuggled alcoholic drinks. That would definitely be forfeited. We don't forfeit immediately because there's a process.
Right.
Yeah, there are days that are given, prescribed in the law, after which you can forfeit, seize and forfeit. It takes about 45 days from the time of interception. So these trucks, the owners must forget about them. We'll donate, we'll
Nothing
decide.
personal?
No, not at all. What is personal there is that they are smugglers. Okay? So if you choose to become a smuggler, you will lose your truck, you will lose your goods.
As we close, do you feel underappreciated sometimes?
I don't do this because I expect anyone to appreciate me.
As an institution?
And yes, that's where I was coming. This is a collective effort. I think I have a very wonderful team, a very good management team and staff that are behind all these initiatives and achievements. I'm proud to say that consistently we are on target, and we are very positive that we'll meet and surpass our 2017 budget. But this is a team effort, and there has never been anywhere in the past, including the Bible, where a taxman was liked. You remember when Zacchaeus met Jesus, everyone was apprehensive. How can Jesus meet such an unclean person and so on? So that perception is historical, it's biblical, but once the population starts seeing government programs being financed, road construction companies being paid, which is now happening, it's because of the money that the taxpayers are contributing. That gives government the necessary liquidity to provide goods and services. I'm hoping that when such tangible things are seen by the population and appreciated, maybe through that appreciation, ZRA also gets appreciated.
And maybe you'll have friends.
Yeah,
Sir,
thank you very much. Thanks, Frenklin.
Thank you very much for coming to start the interview.
Thank you, much
pleasure.
appreciated. Thank you.
Excellent. So that's it for today's edition. We've been speaking to the ZRA Commissioner General, Mr. Kingsley Chanda, looking at the amnesty that has been announced and a few other issues pertaining to ZRA's operations. Obviously, we couldn't tackle everything. But thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.